February of 2003. And then you've got the St. Louis Rams. We talked
Yeah.
about this today for our meeting, our prep conference, our meeting. And that is, we talked about how the Rams are a team that is possibly knowing that could this be the final
Yeah, we'll talk about
the
that.
final home game for the St.
Yeah,
Louis Rams.
we'll talk about that after the top of the hour. By the way, if you want to chime in on what you think about tonight's Thursday night game that maybe should be played in Ethiopia between the Buccaneers and the Rams, give us a call, area code 405-562-5463. You can also text us at 77948. We're talking about the Buccaneers and the Rams, a game being played in St. Louis tonight, and a game that, I'll be honest, maybe I'm a little bit surprised here about this game because before the beginning of the season, the St. Louis Rams seemed to be a pretty solid team on paper. Now, we knew Seattle was going to be there, Arizona. I can't say I'm surprised with Arizona because they did go 9-1 at one point a year ago. But the St. Louis Rams, it seems that they turned it up a few notches toward the end of the season. They had a pretty good defense. They did lose to Arizona around this time last year on a Thursday night. But St. Louis, they were playing some pretty darn good football. They got rid of Sam Bradford. They went they shipped him out to Philadelphia. Nick Foles comes in. And I got to tell you, I was very optimistic with what Nick Foles could have potentially bring because he came on as a backup role with the Philadelphia Eagles. I remember he had a great game last year down in Houston against the Texans, played pretty well. And with his demeanor, if you listen to Nick Foles, I mean, this guy's got some pretty good demeanor. He's not a guy that's going to give you some dull sound bites. He's very articulate, a guy that speaks very well for somebody that can give media interviews. But I'm surprised here, maybe not much of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the St. Louis Rams, I am surprised that they are not necessarily on top of the AFC West here, Sean, but a team that's not in contention either as one of the two wild card spots or a team just outside looking in, not by much. I'm just surprised.
Surprised about the Buccaneers, yeah, no question about
I'm
that.
surprised about the Rams.
And surprised about St. Louis. Well, Jeff Fisher is a good coach. You got to remember the days that he had with the Tennessee Titans. He did get them to the Super Bowl. He got him some playoff appearances. The guy's a veteran coach, so he knows all about what it takes to get a team turned around. And that's always a good thing when you have a veteran. When you have a veteran coach that knows the NFL, knows what he needs to do to get this team turned around, that's a huge objective. And the objective for Jeff Fisher is he realizes that this is a young St. Louis Rams team, a young Rams team, knowing where they're going to be by this time next year, that's trying to fight for their lives, trying to not for their lives, but they're trying to look ahead, seeing what their future is going to be like. What will this team need? What kind of pieces do they need? The Rams have a lot of things that they need to fix. There's a lot of holes that need to be fixed there.
Yeah, there certainly are a lot of holes, but I'm just surprised with the way they played last year that we're not seeing the Rams. I'm not saying for them that, look, Arizona, 11-2 record. Seattle, playing a lot better, I think, than an 8-5 record, at least what we've seen the last few weeks with Seattle winning games and seemingly turning on the form of 2013 and 2014 here. But the St. Louis Rams, it just has not panned out for them. They're 5-8. Look, they don't have any playoff shot. Listen, their playoff hopes are pretty much dead in the toilet. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I want to get back to them because you're talking about Lovie Smith here. Being the Chicago Bears fan that I am, maybe I shouldn't be surprised about Lovie Smith because Lovie Smith, the one thing he will bring is ultimate respect. He came to the Bears in 2004. Which was, I'll be honest, if you take a look at really the 10 years leading up to Lovie Smith's rival in Chicago, it was pretty depressing. It was a sad state. And I'm looking at these 10 years because it had been, listen, let's look at the period of 1992 or 1993 to 2003, those 11 seasons. Because those were the 11 seasons sandwiched in between Mike Ditka's last year in 1992 and Lovie Smith's first year in 2004. If you take a look at those years, it was really a depressing era for the Chicago Bears, although they did make it to the playoffs a couple of years and had one pretty darn good season in 2001. But this was an era in which the Green Bay Packers were dominating the NFC Central, in which the Bears were in at the time. They obviously had Brett Favre. The Bears could not find any answers at the quarterback position. They had made it to the playoffs in 2 seasons from 1993 to 2003, having gone 1-2. Yeah, hard to believe. Dave Wanstead actually won a playoff game. I know, 1994, the wild card game in the Metrodome against the Minnesota Vikings. I can tell you, it was January 1st, 1995, a Sunday. How do I know? I watched it with my dad. But the Bears were going through really a depressive era in the 10 years between Mike Dick and Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith comes to the Bears in 2004. You know what he says? The first thing we need to do is beat the Packers. They do that in the early going. They make the playoffs in 05 and 06. They get to the Super Bowl in 06. They get to the playoffs in 2010. Listen, the Chicago Bears, if you take a look at them really since 1992, hasn't been necessarily a good run for the Bears since Mike Ditka left. But Lovie Smith certainly brought back somewhat of a Bears renaissance, having the Bears made it to the Super Bowl and a few playoff wins. So you know what? I think he knows what he's doing in Tampa Bay.
I think he does. And just all that you told me, that, that the Bears really hadn't been successful.
Oh, it was depressing.
Yeah, it's been a really depressing time for Chicago Bear fans. Because
I hated Brett Favre. I'll be honest. Looking back on Brett Favre, I admire him. I admire Brett Favre greatly. I mean, this guy played 297 consecutive games, and don't think he was healthy throughout all of them. Trust me, he was hurt and found his will to play. But mentioning Brett Favre, here's the thing. The reason why I hate Brett Favre is because Brett Favre had something the Chicago Bears didn't have, and that was a quality quarterback. All right, I'll be honest. I was jealous. My hatred came because I was jealous of Brett Favre, jealous of the Green Bay Packers, because Brett Favre was playing for the Green Bay Packers. They were going to Super Bowls. They won a Super Bowl. They were in the playoffs every year, and it was a revolving door of Chicago Bears quarterbacks. So look, I admire Brett Favre. I admire him as a person, and he was one hell of a quarterback. He was one of the toughest, if not the toughest SOB to ever play that position. But the reason why I can honestly say I hated Brett Favre at the time was because he was something the Chicago Bears didn't have. And you know what? Lovie Smith comes in 2004, and guess what? The Bears, once again, are winners.
Indeed. And if you look at what that Chicago Bears team had done, there's a lot of transitioning. Dave Wanstead had come in there, and Dave Wanstead thought he could turn the Bears around, and he didn't do that. And then, of course, Lovie Smith came in and really kind of brought kind of like the relaxed atmosphere. I mean, for them to get to the Super Bowl like they did in 06 really surprised, I think, a lot of people.
Yeah, the Bears in the Super Bowl, I'll be honest, it's a rarity. And speaking as a Chicago Bears fan here, prestige history, not a prestige Super Bowl history. And I think about 2012 when Lovie Smith was fired. And the reason why Lovie Smith was fired as the head coach of the Chicago Bears was this team, the Chicago Bears, wanted to go in an offensive direction because they had Jay Cutler. They wanted to work an offense around him. They wanted to bring in an offensive guru, a quarterback guy. They brought in Mark Trestman. We know how that fared. But when Lovie Smith, Sean, was fired after the 2012 season, everybody knew it was coming. There were Bear players on that team that hated him. I mean, they not hated him. They just hated the fact that Lovie Smith was fired. They did.
Indeed. And now with him going to the Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a team that wants to be a serious threat. They want to be a tough team. They want to be a team that is expected to they want to be a team that hopefully can be there in the next few years. There's going to be a lot of questions about where this Buccaneers team is going, but 6-7 is an improvement. Can they get better? Yeah, maybe. Can they get better for next year? That's another question mark too. But like you said, Frank, before the beginning of the NFL season, you had told me before that you've really felt that the Buccaneers are just a few years away. So you know what we're talking about is that Lovie Smith, the job he did with the Bears, Lovie Smith can hopefully try to bring that to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because
And
Tampa Bay
right,
knows they can still. They need to
yes.
win tonight, though. They have to
Oh
win tonight to
boy,
maybe.
do they!
But I know it's probably going to be too little, too late for them to hopefully have a chance to get to the NFL playoffs. But maybe with the Buccaneers, it's a sign of things to come. Maybe it's a sign of things to come for them. This is a team that wants to win the Super Bowl, haven't won it since the 2002 Buccaneers. And we all know how great that Buccaneers team was in 2002.
Jameis Winston. Here's a guy that was at Florida State, great quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner, a guy that had issues. He had issues off the field. Listen, we all pretty much know about them. But I think for somebody such as Jameis Winston, Lovie Smith, with his calm, cool, and collective approach, could not be the best coach, could not be a more perfect coach that he could play for. Because if you take a look at Jameis Winston this year, don't you get the sense too, and I know you don't follow college football the way I do, but obviously you, Sean, you know about Jameis Winston's character issues that he had at Florida State. Don't you get the sense too that Lovie Smith has played an impact role in Jameis Winston, maybe being a father figure to him? Because we don't hear about any problems with Jameis Winston. We do with Johnny Manziel over in Cleveland, but Jameis Winston, first year, what problems have there been? None. I think it's perfect that he's playing for Lovie Smith. He needs Lovie Smith, and guess what? Lovie Smith needs Jameis Winston to guide him in the right direction.
Indeed, indeed, and I think it's just that Jameis Winston's you're right. He's a rookie quarterback.
Yes,
He knows if he wants to win Super Bowls, he's got a lot of work to do. He's got to grow from it, and he's got to be good. I thought the Tennessee Titans game, remember when they lost week 1, 42-14 at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay, Florida? People are like, well, here we possibly go again where the Buccaneers are going to be a bad team this year. But Jameis Winston has kept that Buccaneers team in it. That they're expected to be that team that maybe find that this guy could be the franchise quarterback of the team. But it is debatable. Really, really is going to be debatable about what's going to happen for the foreseeable future with Jameis Winston.
right, certainly.
I think though that the Buccaneers are a team that maybe hopefully will be competitive in the NFC. It's hard to say. It really, really is.
All right, Sean, you mentioned about something debatable, and we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to go into something that could be debatable here. And what about the St. Louis Rams and their future in St. Louis? Los Angeles? Is St. Louis even a good football city? That's debatable. Why I don't think St. Louis is a good football city. Sean, I want to hear your opinion, and we're going to get into that when we come back. After this commercial timeout, he's Sean Mann, I'm Frank Sprankle. We're driving. You're cruising with us on the Sports Drive.
Amen.
Radio.
Time for commercials. If you listen hard enough, you might hear the subliminal messages telling you to buy whatever we are selling.
1-877 Cards for Kids. KARS Cards for Kids. 1-877 Cards for Kids. Donate your card today.
1-877 Cars for Kids. KARS Cars for Kids. 1-877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
Also on the web at carsforkids.com. That's Cars with a K. We're a recognized 501c3 charity organization, so you'll receive a maximum tax deduction. What's more, you'll receive a free vacation voucher of 3 days and 2 nights.
1-877 Cars for Kids. KARS Cars for Kids. 1-877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
Why are anglers buying fishing shirts sold by hunting apparel companies? Ocean Vita is a true fishing apparel company focused on the coastal lifestyle. The clothing is designed specifically to handle the elements that anglers deal with on their fishing trips, such as staying dry, cool, and protected from the sun's harmful ultraviolet rays. Ocean Vita uses proven water-resistant technology, moisture risking fabrics, strategic air ventilation, and a high ultraviolet protection factor. All of the designs and color choices